Well, what was the first film you ever saw in your life? Do you remember that?
No.
No. Yeah. But circumstances maybe. Where were you born and what kind of place was your first home?
No, I was born in Greece.
Yeah.
I think the very first image I saw it was just after the German occupation. Behind the church, there was a small projection in 16 millimeters. They were showing movies of the camps, of the occupation in other countries in Europe. And one very strong one, I remember, it's Mussolini with Clara Petacci, who was his girlfriend, and they were killed and dragged down the streets, the bodies. It was that kind of...
That was shown?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They showed those things to very young kids. But then very quick, I think that in Greece, after the German occupation, there was very authoritarian, if I can say, more than authoritarian government. So, and big censorship. The only movies we could see at that time, late 40s, there were movies, action movies. You know, the kind of Schwarzenegger movies, but at that time. And, but not very serious movies, very few ones, because of the censorship. And when I went to France, in the 55, then I discovered that I could have and see other kind of movies and other kind of cinema in the French Cinematheque and in the small French theaters around the Sorbonne. And for me it was a kind of enlightenment to see that with movies you can do serious movies, interesting, speak about people, not only action, not only just, the cowboy movies with Randolph Scott. Do you remember Randolph Scott?
Of course, yes. I knew him better than my own father. Well, let's go back to your childhood. Can you describe your family life? What did your father do? What did your mother do, and so on? How many brothers did you have?
My father didn't. I don't know if it was a mistake. It cost him a lot. After during the German occupation, did resistance with there was two groups of resistance: the right wing and the left wing. The left wing, so-called, was against the return of the king. And my father never liked the king. So he was with the left-wing people. And after the occupation, he lost his job. He went to jail for years. They thought he was kind of communist or anything. And to have a very difficult life. So I have two brothers. One, he's a lawyer in Athens. The other one, he's a doctor. He's making research in the United States. But the life was a kind of, like most of the Greeks at that time, very, very difficult life. But it was a nice time at the same time. We have discovered what was to be a complete at the other side. It was, the mother has to work when the father was in jail, because, it wasn't jail as a matter of fact. It was in Greece they sent them to the islands. Not for vacation. You go there for vacation, but not and be school and Athens was very poor town. Little food. I don't want to insist on that. But anyway, it was kind of interesting time. We had a great parents, and especially the mother, who pushed us very strongly to study, to go to the school to study. And that was very important. And so we did. And later on, because of the father's life, I couldn't go to the Greek university, so I have to go to outside. And the only country was possible to go, it was in France, because in France the universities and the life of the students was and still is much easier. You don't pay for the university. There was special restaurants and places for the students. And it was a kind of great time because we could work with other students during the weekends, make enough money to continue there. Because if our parents, of course, they couldn't send me money. So after the Sorbonne, I went I studied letters, literature. And then I discovered as I was saying, I discovered the French Cinematheque, directed by Langlois. And
Very hardly anticipated that you would one day be the director of the Cinematheque.
yeah, that's a kind of...
Perhaps you didn't anticipate that.
No, really not. And then I went to Lidec, which was the French school for cinema. It was a good school. Not as rich as it is today, but at the time it was interesting for me to discover the way you can make cinema, to discover the camera, to discover the projectors, to discover everything. And the studies were quite simple because we have to do very short movies, and every student has to go to the different positions in a crew, to be electrician, to be cameraman, to be grip, and then you can learn all the difficulties a crew can have. And that was very helpful later when I started doing movies. And then by extraordinary luck, when I finished the school called me. They said Yves, who was a very important director at the time, needs an apprentice for a few weeks. And so that was my first relationship with the French cinema. It went very well. And the first ID was Claude Pinoteau. He said, "Why you don't do with me my next movie as second ID?" This movie was with René Clair. And I was assistant for a few years. And I was very lucky to work with very important directors like René Clair, René Clément, Jacques Demy, some others.
What films of René Clair, by the way?
The movie was Toulon du Monde. It was the movie with one of the very last movies he did. But it was a kind of extraordinary experience for a foreigner to get in the heart of French cinema. And the French directors, French people were very good to me. They accepted me like if I wasn't French. And I decided to stay. And so I did.
You assisted Jacques Demy also.
That's right.
What were the films?
With Jean Moreau.
Yeah.
Jacques Demy was a great experience because he was coming from WWII, it was completely different cinema from René Clair's or René Clément's, or even Ivan Negret's movies. It was a completely different approach, and essentially he liked to work a lot with the actors, to get into the psychology of the characters. He didn't care so much about the technical problems. It was the story and the actors. It was important with him to see how you create with an actor who has a kind of his character and his way of seeing the character to change and to bring the actor to your way of seeing the character, which sometimes, most of the time, is the most difficult thing. Because an actor reads the script and essentially they are much more egoistic than us, the directors. They all see themselves. They say, "I'm the movie." Sorry for the actors being here, but it's normal. So you have to bring them from what they think to what the character must be. And Jacques Demy was really a master for that. And no screams, no, big show off on the set. just good relationship with everybody. Probably was the best lesson again.
Yeah. It would be nice if you would also describe the working methods of this old school of French filmmaking, the working methods of René Clair, who is already much underestimated at this moment, which is very, very great pity because he made so many wonderful films.
Absolutely.
And he was a great master and also a great writer, by the way. It's, I mean, that what he has published is quite fantastic about cinema.
About cinema.
Yeah, early cinema. And,
editing,
yes,
cinema.
yes. Yeah. So how was?
No, the problem with René Clair, just 2 words about that, was the La Nouvelle Vague, New Wave. The New Wave decided to make a revolution to destroy whatever it was before, and then to build another cinema, which it was what young people do all the time was important. But they were so aggressive against them. They suffered them. I remember seeing René Clair or people, even people like René Clément, some other directors with whom I didn't work, Duvivier, some others, they were suffering because all the Nouvelle Vague were so aggressive against them. They were insulting. René Clair liked to have everything on the script. We were 3 assistants. I was what he called the script assistant. The script assistant was an assistant next to him all the time with the script, and he was saying to the script assistant what we has to do, what to do, say to the actors, what to say to the technicians. And he has a kind of, I can say, master's position, like most of the directors they used to do at that time. For example, Duvivier, he did some extraordinary movies. He used to come on the set, sitting in a high chair, and don't say anything to nobody, and except to his 2 assistants, with a kind of completely different cinema. René Clair was much more closer to the people. So, but he was very friendly. I discovered a lot of things, and essentially how to his generation used to approach the movies. For example, they hated to go very close to the characters or to the people. René never did, because we talked a lot of times about close shots. And he said, come here today, I will show you the closest shot we do. It will be in the movie. It was a close shot like this. Because he said, if you don't have a big screen like this, show face, it's insane, it's not normal. Later on, when he saw my first movie, I have some very close shots on the eye, he said, you're crazy. So the first day he gave me the script, he said, the movie's here, you're going to have to shoot it. Which means everything was on the script. My generation, before that, the Nouvelle Vague, of course, they have improvisation, provided they have sometimes just a few pages and they were going to provide with the actors the story. Probably there's a whole mythology about that. But for example, they say Jean-Luc Godard never had a script, but Jean-Luc Godard always had a piece of paper, his pocket, he comes out and he reads and then he says to the actor what to do, which means he's preparing himself like everybody, because you cannot say, I need a horse in the movie, and arrive early morning say, bring me the horse. You have to ask a few days before to have the horse.
Or like Michael Curtis said, that bring me the empty horses. That's one of the famous saying. Well, it would be fascinating to hear also about René Clément, who is considered to be a great professional, great technician.
Probably the best technician without exaggeration, we ever had in France. René Clément used to do one movement of the camera and cut in the middle to another movement. And when you see the movie, you think it's the same movement. And it happened to me to see once, twice, 3 times the movie to understand the way he did it. And even being with him at the was, you cannot discover how he was doing on the set. He was essentially an extraordinary editor. He had the movie completely in mind.
It seems to have been quite a privilege that you happened to have your apprentice years exactly at the time when you could see both the old school and new school and gather influences from both.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary chance,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Very unique.
Yeah. And what, in a way, you are then, you also continued the old school. You had the great things of the old school in your.
Of course, because
in your.
I believe René Clair owned that period from the silent movie. I think personally that the silent period of everything has been done in cinema during the silent period, during the 30, 35 years of the silent period. Everything. Since then, we're repeating again and again. The extraordinary things for what? Because they have to find solutions for something he couldn't use with the words. And I think Aki says somewhere, he hates words. He says, they're polluting our movies.
How did your life then proceed towards your first own movie? That what gave you a chance?
No, I never thought that I could make a movie in France. I was very happy to be one of the, let's say, good assistants in Gerard, asked to work with important directors. When I finished the movie with René Clair, he said, in 4 months I'll do another movie, could you wait? I said, okay, I will wait. And in the meantime, I discovered a book called The Sleeping Car Murders, Compartiment Tueur. And when I read it, I never read books about, police investigations and so forth. But this thing was kind of very interesting. And I said, why are we going to try to adapt it as a script? Just as an exercise. Because I had nothing to do and I didn't have the rights. And so for 1 month, for 2 months I worked and I did the script. And then I put it there, and when I started working with Renan, I gave it to a secretary to take it, to be able to reread it, to see how it was. And she gave it after taping it, and she said, I will give it to the director of the studio. And the director of the studio sent me a telegram saying, this is a good script, and I want to work with you, to discuss about that with you. And during discussion he says, okay, you have the rights and we can go on, try to make the movie. And I said, I don't have the rights. And he said, you did the script without having the rights. You're crazy, because I didn't even know if the rights were free. And so he took care about that. And it became a kind of funny thing, because I gave to the script to read to Simone Signoret to ask her if Catherine, his daughter, could play a role. And she said, no, wait, Catherine is at the school at the moment, but if you like, I knew Simone very well since I worked with her in René Clair's movie. So she said, I can play for you the old actors, she said. I was very surprised. And then Montand, whom I knew a little bit, he said, Simone said that you have a very good script. Is there a part for me? I said, Yves, really, there's something for you. You take it. And it was amazing. Then Michel Piccoli crossed the street and said, Simone, Yves said you have a good script. And Michel's in the movie, and it becomes so like a joke. If you see the movie, there are so many known actors. Some actors like Françoise Arnould, who at the time was quite a star, there was no part for her. So she's doing an extra. And so does Daniel Gerard, because everybody says, I'd like to be in that movie. It became the kind of family movie.
It was a society event.
Yeah.
A party.
And there was a big surprise, so we did the movie. The movie was a good success, and the movie was also shown in the United States, and good critics, and been among the 10 best of the year or something like this. So, you know, that was the beginning. It was a very unusual beginning.
So you say that it was by a chance that in a way you handled a thriller as your first film, that you didn't have any kind of special interest to thrillers, or
no.
you were just like a spectator probably.
But you know, I believe in thriller. Thriller has a kind of bad reputation. I disagree completely with that reputation. I think if you go back to the Greek tragedies, to 25 centuries ago, they have thrilling stories. Because what's a thriller? It's to try to understand what's going on, to try to understand what's going to happen. I think every morning if we open the newspaper, it's to know something new. For me, that's a thriller. Essentially. Of course, it was used in all kinds of directions. But I think it's part of our life. But of course, for Sleeping Car Murders, it was just a kind of, as I was saying, an exercise, little by little become a movie. And but I still like to go and see movies. Hitchcock movies was the movies through them we learned movies. As some others, and still they remain classic movies. So I'm trying to fight against the bad reputation of the thrillers.
Yeah. As we are getting nearer to that breakthrough film that Z, without any doubt, was, so I would ask about the other, if that is considered also kind of new kind, totally renewed kind of thriller. It created a new kind of cinema even. So how about the political life? Did you participate in your student days, or did you have you had a background that your father had been some kind of politically marginal person in Greece, but did you have that interest, or from early on, in the 50s or earlier?
Generally, they say for the Greeks that there are 10 million Greeks and there are 10 million political parties. No, when I went to France, there was a very tough period because it was the 50s, there was the war of Algeria and a lot of movements around the students. But friendly students told me, don't stay away because you know they were going to throw you out if the French police, if you participate in that kind of. So for years I was just a spectator. It was very interesting because the first thing probably I learned in France was the freedom. When I get to France, at the Cité Universitaire, which is a place for students, a kind of huge place for students, campus for students. In the house where we were living, there were all the newspapers. Among them, you have the communist papers, the royalist newspapers, which for me, coming from Greece, if you could say that you are left or right, then you go to jail at that time completely. So it was a kind of extraordinary thing to discover that you could discuss about everything with the other students without any fear.
One more question about this, because I'm wondering how did you get all this knowledge? You are so knowledgeable about, you seem to move so easily within a kind of very wide political context. So just as for the information, just as for the general knowledge about history and politics, how did you get that? How did that come inside you? Was it just general reading and listening to things, or did you systematically at point study these themes?
You know, what's politics? It's very few things. It's, in life, we have to be free, have our dignity respected, and our freedom respected, and live in a society in which gives to the young people and to the older people and to the old people the best possible life and the possibilities to have the best life. That's, I think, from that point, on, you decided the rest, it's not very complicated politically. Then you have to decide who is the leader, or who is the political party or the political idea. For my generation, after the war, all of us believed that the communism was the solution for the problems of that birth. And why? First, because Stalin fought against Hitler, and we can say that Stalin stopped the Hitler in Stalingrad. Hitler was winning everywhere, and Stalingrad, it was the first stop. And if you study, so he became a big hero. From the other hand, you have the Western people being aggressively against Stalin, and at the same time doing the war in exploiting Africa, South America, or Indonesia. The Eastern countries, Stalin was saying, no racism, no poor people. And of course, we are tended to believe him. And then, of course, little by little, discovered that he was saying nothing of that was real. So it was tragic to discover in the 50s, especially after the Hungary, the Budapest intervention Stalin did, or not Stalin, but anyway, it was the same thing. So my generation started trying to understand what's going on, much more than now, where things are completely different. And we tried to understand and started to see the world with a different eye, with a much more critical eye. And probably we become much more political than today up until '68. I think all this movement from the 50s, the 60s, and up until '68 with that huge explosion in Paris, in France, and little by little around the world, which I think was a very healthy explosion. It changed a lot of things.
Let's go now to movies, and then I'm sure with the films we can continue the development of this. So you still made one movie more before that. There's Un homme de trop.
Yeah, Un homme de trop was the kind of movie to speak about the occupation and the young people. Let me tell you, it was a failure. I think a big mistake on the script. But the idea is to have a character who's in a period of crisis, like it was during the occupation. He decides not to participate, not to go to one side or the other side, to say, I follow my way. I do nothing. I just live my life. But I don't want to speak more about that, because I think this good idea at the beginning wasn't so much in the script, kind of action movie. Because also the other idea is to show that the French resistance was, they were very young people going up the mountains, they were living, it was like in the Western. They weren't living like very seriously speaking about big things, about the future, philosophical things, nothing. They were just hanging around and being very bored and trying to fill up their time with something interesting. So both things together didn't work.
Well, now the birth of Z, how did that develop? It came from the events of the day.
No, Z came like the colonists took the power in Greece, and every Greek in Paris tried to do something to participate in against them. And at the time I had the book of Vasilikos in my hands, and I said, probably I can do that movie. And I spoke to Georges Semprún, who was the writer. And I said, George, you know that story? And he knew the story. I said, I would like to make the movie just because it's my way of doing something against the colonists. And he said, yes, I know the story, let's try. And we did the script, and after doing the script, it was amazing because I gave the script to different actors, and they all accepted. Jean-Louis Trintignant, Jacques Perrin, Yves Montand, all of them. And then I went to the producers to find the money, and nobody liked us to give the money. Say, this is, who cares about a Greek senator being assassinated? And so we were very close to abandon the story, the project. And Jacques Perrin told me, look, probably we can do it in Algeria. And I said, yes, we can shoot it here under certain conditions to change things here and there, because it's too Arabic ambience, but it was easy to change it. And the Algerian government accepted to help us, not with money, but with the technicians and with being able to shoot in the city without problems and so forth. And we have also a grant from the French Centre du Cinéma. And we did the movie quite without being paid because we didn't have the money. And I remember Jacques Perrin, they said, look, they give me $35,000 for Italy. It's not so much money, but you think we can sell it there? I said, do it. If you need the money, we need the money. We just sell it for $35,000. At that time was just nothing. And nobody believed that a movie can be, to tell you, Montand, we asked him to the journalists to come, you know, to make a trip to the Algeria, 1 week of staying, to do an interview. Nobody came. And we were quite desperate, but we were happy to do the movie because we knew we have a strong movie unless against the colonels. And the movie was shown in Paris, and the first week did nothing. And we were very sad, except for the distributor who said, don't worry, let it go with time. And it was a huge surprise to see that the movie little by little bit built up, and not only in France, everywhere around the world. It was a kind of big surprise for everybody. And to tell you the thing, the movie was, we were paid very little money, all of us, and the actors and everybody. The kind of miracles happen sometimes in the movies. You have those miracles once every 2 years, every 5 years. I'm not speaking about the big movies who, you know, at the beginning they can make a lot of money, but the movies which are completely unknown, nobody believes to them except from the producer, the director, and probably some actors, or all the actors, and then the miracle happens. That was true, that happened to Z, so that historically, the movie came out in a moment, there was a need for a movie like this. But this, you never can control that kind of thing.
I would now put a question that is very obvious to you, but not any more obvious to us. And I would like you to describe the importance of Yves Montand in France, his background, and what kind of national hero he became. Very obviously, I was already becoming at the point of Z. So that is inseparable of the impact of your films, his character.
Yes,
that he is something more than an actor only. So it's
the amazing thing in Z, Yves Montand plays only for 12 minutes, and the movie it's 130 minutes.
Really, is that so?
Yeah. That's right.
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
It's exactly like Third Man. Orson Welles is there maybe 4 minutes.
That's right.
And everybody remembers him. Is that so?
Absolutely. Anyway,
incredible. It's Perrin all the time. Yeah, sure.
Even 12 minutes with his shots where you have only his picture.
Yeah. Well.
Yves Montand was an immigrant, Italian immigrant, and he didn't went to university. I think he even didn't go to the high school because he couldn't. He was coming from a poor family, and he became the first important singer in France, and then actor, and then he had a relationship with Khrushchev, and then later on with Kennedy. I think it's extraordinary to not speak about the ladies. So he was a hero, and also for his positions. He was very close to the Communist Party at the period I was talking about before, without being a member of the Communist Party. And then he was among the most big critics of the Communist Party at the time, when the Communist Party didn't change. So for all those reasons together, became a huge hero. And every time he was saying something in TV, on the radio, everybody was listening. It was amazing the moment when there was important political problems in France, and they were doing polls. Yves Montand was up to 30% to be president. People were saying that's how Yves Montand praised for president. Because when he was speaking with passion, he was saying exactly what he was thinking, with a kind of very direct way, and not the way the politicians do it by, what we call in France the langue de bois, using the wooden language. And at the same time, he was singing, the singers become very, very easily heroes, but they're losing it very easily also. During the war of Indochina, he sang a song about a soldier who loses his life in front of in the opera of Paris, in front of the President of the Republic. It was a big scandal because he had the courage to sing Le Soldat, and you have a lot of young people who were killed in China for nothing, in China who became later Vietnam. So he was representing in a certain way the feeling of the people, not everyone, because some people used to hate him, but I think the majority of the French people, it was interpreted in a certain way, his feelings.
Let's now have the final minutes of chat. We can have a little break, and so to remind us of the feeling. We can show it here. Lähetetään sieltä se.
No, the feeling is that, when I know the biggest, the best souvenir I have is when the night we used to go through the Champs-Élysées and see in front of the cinema complete.
Oh yeah.
Full theater. So it was an extraordinary feeling.
For how long was it complete?
For 46 weeks.
46 weeks, incredible. Fantastic. Okay.
Arrêtez tout! Thomas, déclenche-moi ça!
Mais vous savez très bien que pour une réunion en lieu clos, il ne faut pas d'autorisation.
Je m'en fous! Ça ne vaut pas l'histoire! L'autorisation, sinon vous n'aurez pas la salle! Déclenchez-moi tout ça!
Mais non! Mais vous ne vous
Faites
rendez
ce
pas
que je vous
compte.
dis! Je suis chez moi, ici. Apportez l'autorisation et je remets tout en place. Sinon, trouvez une autre salle. Quoi? Déclenche-moi ça!
Mais soyez raisonnable. Comment trouver une salle maintenant? Et comment prévenir 3 ou 4 000 personnes qui vont arriver de tous les quartiers de la ville?
Je ne savais pas ce que c'était comme réunion.
C'est écrit sur leur su, et vous l'avez signé.
Bon, c'est plus signé maintenant. Voilà votre chèque. Et je vous enverrai des dommages et intérêts. Je vous en prie.
Ils vous ont vraiment menacé.
Je ne comprends pas ce que vous voulez dire.
Enfin, voyons, on ne refuse pas une salle pour laquelle on a été payé sans avoir subi d'énormes pressions.
Vous autres, les avocats, vous cherchez toujours...
Monsieur Bozil, c'est un homme honnête. Alors dites-moi qui est derrière cette histoire. Quelle est la vraie raison?
The next film is exactly about what you were already mentioning about Montand, that he became a critic of Real Socialismus. How did the idea of Lavaux develop?
The idea came because I was during the night of the first of the year in a friend's house, and Claude Lanzmann, Claude Lanzmann who did the Shoah.
It has been shown in Finland, the Finnish Shoahin tekijä Lanzmann,
He was
sociology.
talking about a book by Artur London, and he told me that's a great book, you should read it. The next day, he was so passionate about the book. The next day, I bought the book and I read it. And immediately, I called George Saint-Poon again and said, "Look, you know the confession?" And he said, "Yes, I was part of it in some way." And I said, you think you can make a movie? I would like to make a movie. And he said, it's going to be very difficult. It's a very thick book of 500 pages. And it sounded like this. I had another project with Montand, and I said to the producer, I dropped that project, I would like to do that movie. And Z wasn't yet shown. It was just at the very beginning. Z was shown 1 month later. And everybody was worried about that story, but Simone and I said Montand also, Montand was in the United States making a movie with Barbara Streisand, I think. And I called him and said, I have a story, and I explained to him a little bit the story, what it was about. And he said, George Simone, you would like to do the movie? I said, yes. I said, okay, I'm with you, without reading it. And started like this, and was planning to do that movie. So in two, I don't know if you're familiar with that movie, it's a trial. Artur London was minister in Czechoslovakia after the war. And he was accused to be, he was Jewish, he was accused to be with 13 other people, to be spies working for the United States. And in a Stalinian trial, before the trial, all of them, they confessed that they were spies. They did it under pressure, under psychological and physical also torture. And also they did to help the party. They are convinced that by saying so, they were helping the Communist Party. That's the interesting thing in the story. And they was condemned to death, except for London, another one who survived. And London wasn't executed because his wife was French lady, and her brother, yes, her brother was an important member of French Communist Party, so they didn't execute it. And at the last years of he stood in prison, and he wrote his experience and the way they obliged him to confess. And that's the very interesting part of the story. How you can, little by little, breaking a man, psychologically, physically, and make him say everything you would like to say. So Montand said to do the movie, and the movie when it came out was really something very, very strong, because for the first time, a movie on that system had been done. And there was a huge polemic from every side. Polemic like I think we never saw in France. And then in Italy, and every country where the Communist Party, the polemic was huge.
What is probably especially impressive in the film is how you present the mental landscape of Stalinism. You find visuals for that. Nothing like that had been done, really, hadn't been done. It had been in the literature, in Köstler's book and so on. They had done it literary means, but not in film.
Marchez!
The big difficulty with the movie was to have 500 pages of dialogue, of questions, and answers, and non-answers, and okay. So it was important to try to find something visual of that. So I cannot explain that. Probably you have to see the movie.
But they are going to see.
Just to find a way of not doing just dialogue, people talking, and just to show also the past movie, to use all the possibilities the cinema can give us to show that audience, to show that whole thing was how this system was. It was not a nice thing. It was a kind of method how to destroy man, how to make men believe you or follow you or disappear.
You think it was basically the same systems that were used against London and his comrades in the early 50s that were already developed in the 30s in the Moscow trials?
Oh, yes.
Do you think
the same trial,
the same script in a way?
Method, yes.
Script even.
The same script, absolutely.
Yes,
the same script with technicians who knew how to bring someone from being a nice man, working, family man, and working, trying to help the party to be part of that movement, and then at the end, bring him to in front of a court and confessing the most awful things one can confess.
Je suis allé aux nouvelles. Il n'y aura pas de peine capitale. Le parti n'a pas besoin de tête, mais d'un procès. Un procès des hautes tenues politiques. S'il y a une ou deux condamnations à mort, elles seront de pure forme. Et si quelqu'un se rétracte devant le tribunal, on coupera les micros et on l'entendra plus dans la salle. Et on fera défiler les 20 témoins à charge.
The Stalin film. You are using some clips,
Yeah.
which they are the reality, the kind of
That's
grotesque. Yeah.
the part of manipulation they did at that time in the
Can you tell about that?
People. They, for example, they did movies. They have, probably you know that, they have in the Soviet Union several people playing Stalin. They look exactly like Stalin. And they did movies, very popular movies, in which they used to show Stalin go to Berlin or Stalin never left Moscow. After the war, you see Stalin coming down from a white plane in a white suit, like an agent, coming down to visit Berlin. And there were movies where Stalin was a nice father with kids, and another one where Stalin was trimming his roses, taking care of his roses. He was the perfect father, the perfect grandfather, the perfect father. And so we just keep very short moments in the movie just to show how our character was convincing himself that Stalin was really the big father. He has to help him even by giving his life to him and to the systems he was building up. It was a kind of huge, extraordinary manipulation. Of course, we are today also manipulated. Don't think we are not. It's enough to see television, to see what's going in Kosovo. Anyway, we don't get to that. But we are manipulated. But that kind of manipulation, it was absolutely extraordinary. Because not only they're controlling the press, but they're controlling the schools, they're controlling the minds completely. It's like a science fiction thing. So the trial started, of course, in the 30s. Because the 30s was the first opposition to Stalin. And Stalin has to eliminate the people who are against him. And the best way to eliminate the people who are against him was to have them confessing that they were spies. They would like to destroy the Soviet Union. They would like to destroy the state. And he succeeded very well at that time. And then after the war, he had the same problem. And the problem was what? Was that during the war, a lot of people who were outside in communist, Spain for the Spanish War, came back to the countries. So these people have a different experience of how to fight, how to be to understand democracy, how not to manipulate people, and they start trying to change the systems in the Eastern countries. So the only way the other way to eliminate them, it was to those new trials. And in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, he started new trials. Up until the moment he died, of course, and Khrushchev came and things changed a little bit.
It's interesting that here in passing you mentioned one theme that more and more seems to have interested you, and that is that everybody, even monsters, have a family life, and there are fantastic contradictions. That somebody can be a tender father and then have a horrible past. Even Stalin is no exception. He was kind of ordinary human being.
Yeah, ordinary being, except what he
very ordinary, more than ordinary. Yeah.
I think in the movies, probably since the not the beginning, since the speaking cinema, the bad guys was really very bad. Even their dogs were bad. The kids were bad. Everybody was bad. So it was like crazy people. We were talking with someone yesterday. But crazy people, okay, they're crazy. They're out of the society. But the bad guys are part of us. Are nice human beings for their families and for their friends. Hitler was nice for his dogs first, and for the town. I think it's completely fake. It's a complete fake image cinema has given to us for the bad guys. I believe completely contrary. So, in music box or Betrayed or some movies, I try to deal with that, to show that, and of course, most of us were bad guys for someone. We don't believe it, but we are, I think.
Sure. I agree. It's interesting now when we come to your next film then, L'état de siège, state of siege. So here you were at the point when Montand had been some kind of left-wing romantic hero twice already, and then you give him a role of, let's say, a bad guy, Sartore.
Precisely.
So that's very meaningful, because you interrupt, you don't continue, you don't give a kind of mechanical chance anymore for the spectators to identify too easily. And that creates the meaning of this film, because...
Yeah, but Montand was a hero for his family and for his country. Not for all the country, but part of his country, for his government, he was a hero. And when I proposed to Montand, said, now let's do a bad guy. And he was very happy to do that. Yeah. And it's not usual for an actor to accept to switch, to change his image for the audience. But Montand's image was so strong, I believe it was important to make even that guy believable. And the only way to make that guy believable, Sartore, it was to have played by Montand. And he understood that, he did with kind of big pleasure. Besides for the reasons I just said before about what's about the bad guys. But this movie is a long story, because it started with my idea of making a movie about an American technician, ambassador technician, who was in Greece after the Civil War. And he, in a certain way, he completely ran the Greek government by bringing in American soldiers and all the American help. And from the palace to the ministers, they were always obeying him. And after this, he went in Guatemala, for those older who remember the story of Guatemala, in '56. Became a big mess, and the putsch changed also, thanks to this guy. His name was Purifoy. So, and then he went to in Asia. So I'm trying to find the story of this person. I went to Latin America and I tried to find out. And then I discovered Sartore, which was a kind of new kind of technician for intervention. At that time, the intervention was much more stronger than today because of the two blocks, Eastern Bloc and Western Bloc. And I discovered Sartore's story. Was the real name was Mitrione. And so I switched from one kind to another. I like to see how these small countries are the victims of the big powers, which much less now, much less, there is no doubt. But that time, they couldn't be by themselves. They have to obey, they have to take position. In the Eastern world, countries like Hungary, like Poland, like Czechoslovakia, they have to obey completely Stalin. And the Western world, they have to obey to the big power, who was the American power, and French, English, the Western power, the Western philosophy. It was a kind of, how can I say, a kind of controlled democracies. We were living under controlled democracies. And particularly in South America, which always have been considered being the guardian of the United States. And Greece was a little bit like the South America, because it was the frontier of the communism, the front, at the north. So I I try to explore that character and also the movements, the young movements, the so-called revolutionary movements, who go from a normal, let's say, philosophy or ideology to how to defend the violence, how they switch a little bit by chance, a little bit by stupidness or by bad analysis to the violence, and that makes them disappear. Not only them, but also their philosophy, which at the beginning could be interesting and important for the country. And those were the two Pamaras. So those two things were explored, tried to explore them in State of Siege.
Mm-hmm. There is one theme which concentrates much from your other films also. You in a way have repeatedly expressed this idea that there is, in that kind of political situation, there is no room for emotions. That's expressed by the character of Jean-Luc Bidon in the film very well, that there is no room for emotions, that this is strictly a political question. So in a way you seem to bring the human dimension to these political stories that are more or less machinations of power and so on. And that's the originality of the films, that there's always the human element. And even Montand character is quite fantastic because he's so professional. He accepts his death. He knows that as a professional, this is it.
Parce que vous êtes en crise et qu'ils en profitent. Ils chercheront à vous donner le coup de grâce. Et ils n'ont rien d'autre à faire que de mettre à profit ce que vous allez faire vous. Ils ne savent pas ce que nous ferons vraiment. Je ne sais pas ce que vous ferez en définitive, mais je sais ce qu'ils feront eux. Parce qu'ils feront exactement ce que je ferais moi si j'étais à leur place. C'est-à-dire rien.
He's like in the Hemingway short story, The Killers, that
right.
he accepts that.
They have made a decision.
Yeah.
They made a decision for a certain kind of life, for a certain kind of behavior, and they know the what can happen to them. Mm. And they're not surprised. Of course, they try to survive, but they know.
Yeah.
And they're technicians. And they don't. They have emotions, but the ideology they have, they cannot participate in the emotions. Or the contrary, because if it does, then they won't follow the way they follow. Mm. They don't leave the emotions to take over them.
Yeah.
It's like politicians, you know.
Yeah.
Our political people, whatever they say in front of the camera, let me tell you, it's my personal opinion. When they say, "Oh, it's very sad," no, they just have they way of seeing and the emotions, except of course of the family emotions they can have, but the emotions in large scale, they don't use them. They have the techniques, the way things have to go to happen. Mm. If they play with emotions, it's over. They don't go to politics.
Yeah. But they must express emotions, like the American president must express emotions when there's a national catastrophe somewhere, and he obviously doesn't care a damn that 12 people are killed somewhere, but he must, in a way, in a close-up,
yes,
be more sad than any member of a family.
Absolutely. Kiss the young boys and children, and then pet the dogs, and then going back after the catastrophe to the minister, say, "No, how much money we give them to try to arrange that catastrophe?" Yeah. They say, "X money." No, that's too much money. Let's give them half of it. Yeah. If not, they cannot survive.
It's fascinating that how good Montand is in this role, which is so different from the others, because I can't imagine any other actor who would be so good in the role of Santore, because he gives something very much of himself to the role, the passivity, certain kind of that he doesn't have to express much. He doesn't have to act seemingly.
No, we decided from the beginning he's a stone-faced person.
Yeah.
Everything's inside, and he's a technician. No, for the three of the movies, for Z, for The Confession, and for this one, for State of Siege, I didn't see any other actor playing the part. For State of Siege, the American co-producers proposed to me John C. Scott, which was a great actor. At the time, was really extraordinary actor. For those who have seen Patton, he's the actor playing Patton or some other American movies. But I thought it was still him. It couldn't really have that kind of behavior in front of the tragedy, because he lives a tragedy, this person. And he faces his own tragedy in a very cold way, in a very ideological way.
What then, how to specify the role of fiction and the role of facts in your narratives? That how much, in a way, and in what sense do you enlarge the factual stories into fictions? What is the dividing line? Is there any?
Oh, there is one line, there are several lines.
Yeah.
No, of course, fiction, a real story takes place in days, hours, days, months sometimes. Instead, a movie takes place in 2 hours, so it's an impression. It's like an expressionism. You see a painting, and you say this is south of France, or this is the king, or it's the portrait of this man, and you believe this portrait is the man. I think the movie is the same thing with the story. It's important just to. The important thing in a story like Confession is not to show the whole thing, because it's impossible, but to give the right impressions and not manipulate the audience with fake tricks or with fake characters or with fake dialogues. It's important to stay as close as possible to the reality, but knowing that if you don't see the story, you have an impression of the story. I don't know if I'm clear there. It's a very difficult thing to explain, and especially with
No, it seems clear. That's far.
For me, always was the important thing. It's everything is being used is to show things which have happened, and the general impression to stay as close as possible at the story, at the book, at the real story. One of the examples I have for Santore in State of Siege, it was very possible to do scenes with his family, to see how the family was sad. I never showed that, because I never was able to know what was his relationship with his family. The only thing I knew, it was seeing from far away, the way the Tupamaras used to see him. So I only showed this part of his life. I never went into his house. And then I see him only at that period where I used to have really witnesses. They told me exactly about his behavior.
What have been your major problems with the censorship? Because each of these films mentioned now is I would imagine is likely to get you into trouble.
No, not me, with the producers, because some countries they don't show the movies. For example, at the beginning it was very amazing to see this country couldn't show the movie. And then years later, the system changed. For the Confession, it was more or less the same, but with Eastern countries. For years, the Eastern countries didn't touch the Confession.
When did it surface? When did it go to Eastern countries for the first time?
Czechoslovakia, when just before the elections for Václav Havel.
Yeah. So it was shown in...
It was shown. We went, all of us there. It was a huge thing done.
You went there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And what did they write about it, and how did they feel about it?
I don't read the Czechoslovakian papers.
Wow.
A lot of good things, I think, and a lot of, essentially they spoke about, not to tell you the truth,
Yeah.
people from Václav Havel's team came to me, they say, we would like to show the movie before the elections, can we?
Yeah.
I said, of course. That was the first time I accepted one of my movies to play a role in an election. It was because of Václav Havel, whom I know a little bit, and I really like the person very much. And no, it was an extraordinary evening, because we were there, Montand was there, and the people were amazed. But some of them they have already seen the movie, because the movie used to circulate in Eastern countries on cassettes with a different name.
Uh-huh.
They used to buy the cassettes over here and change the tag with the name and send it. But in the theater, it was
Maybe under the name of Deep Throat.
yeah. This happened a lot with Missing and Chile.
Oh.
Yeah, for years.
So, for years, yes. But now it can obviously be shown, yeah.